it's just an example. Purdue losing to Fresno State is okay. We can still win the Big Ten West. But me,
Billy Napier gets fired. I'm just kidding.
really the best time of the year. I will be seated watching the Red Zone for 7 hours on Sunday. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to an episode of Backyard Banter. Johnny, James, Tanner. Boys, the college football playoff landscape is starting to take shape a little bit. Unless the SEC ends in like an 8-way tie, which it could. But we'll get to that when we get to it. 2 huge SEC games this weekend. Alabama goes into LSU and just dog walks LSU. That was a very impressive performance for Alabama. But the game that we're going to start with is Georgia went to Oxford in a game that was rain-soaked. Looks like Jackson Dart had his foot fall off for a possession and then came back, and he was pretty good. But Ole Miss beat Georgia. And, James, we'll go to you first. I mean, what was your takeaway from this game? And the real question is not if Georgia is going to make the playoff. The question is how many SEC teams are going to make the playoffs with these 2 losses. Yeah. But we'll get to that later. Talk about Ole Miss.
I think that question is like, especially as a Notre Dame fan, right? As a Notre Dame fan, we'll get into it. Obviously, I still feel very confident in 11-1 team, whether they deserve it or not. They're going to get in because of the money that it brings. So Tanner could shake his. You could. I don't give. I could not care less that you're shaking your head. But I'm just. It is what it is. But you look at this Georgia team. We've talked about them when they played Bama. We talked about them all the time about their defense, whatever, and like it answered the question when they, when we were totally wrong on the prediction. But Jackson Dart was very good for Ole Miss on all levels. I mean, he ran the ball well. He threw the ball well. I don't think he was incredibly accurate. I don't think Jackson Dart played his best game. But Ole Miss just dominated the game because I also look at this for Georgia. We talked about it before we even started filming it. Like, Carson Beck is not it. And he's not a national championship caliber quarterback. And it's hard to say that because the quarterbacks that Georgia maybe brought to a national championship, but like, hey, those were great college football players, right? And Carson Beck just hasn't been that. He turns the ball over way too much. Again, he had another game where he didn't throw a touchdown pass, but he threw another interception. Like, the turnovers for Carson Beck is getting out of control at that point. Obviously, you look at Georgia; they're 7-2. You tip your cap to them because they're still one of the best teams that we've seen in the last 5 years. But I just don't think they have it this year. And Ole Miss, Johnny, you were big on them here these last few weeks. Yeah, they're a really good team. It was fun to watch that game because, like you said, it looked like a grind. That game was like a grind. It was wet. It looked gross, but it looked like a fun time at the same time being down there in Mississippi. But shout out to Ole Miss. It's a huge win. They kind of set themselves up there in that caliber of the 2 lost SEC teams. And, I mean, something's got to give at some point, right? So who knows?
Yeah, I actually had a game myself, so I was not able to watch this one. So I hate being this type of guy, but I'm going to be a box score peeker here. It sounds like what you said about Carson Beck looks correct, just based off of this 20 for 31, 186, no tubs and a pick. That's not very good. Out of Carson Beck, especially someone who is supposedly supposed to be a top 10 draft pick. So he needs to be way better, and I think we've all said that for a couple weeks now. He's been pretty lackluster so far this season, very underwhelming for sure. He was someone that was thought of to be the best quarterback in the country, Heisman, maybe the number 1 overall pick. He's not lived up to that whatsoever. He's underperformed mightily. But what really sticks out to me when I look at this game is the difference in the run game. Ole Miss averaged 3.7 yards per carry, but they had 134 yards rushing. Georgia only had 59 yards rushing and averaged 1.8 yards per carry. Obviously, that's a little bit misleading because Carson Beck took some sacks, but 1.8 yards per carry is not going to get it done in the SEC, especially on the road against a pretty tough opponent with their season on the line, right? Ole Miss, this was an elimination game for them. They had to win this game. So I would say just Georgia, I mean, you got to be able to run the ball. Carson Beck's got to be better. Obviously, I wasn't able to watch, but that's kind of my takeaways when I look at the stats of that game.
Yeah, it was a very interesting game because Ole Miss has the turnover and Georgia scores right away. And you're like, wow, that's a punch in the mouth. And then Jackson Dart's not on the field. They got their backup in the game, who's like 17 years old and reclassed twice. I only know this because he was committed to Florida.
Yeah.
And so obviously he's going to be him and Ryan Williams. Couldn't even there might have been the only two college players that couldn't vote in this past election. But it just shows how good of an offensive coach Lane Kiffin is. I think a lot of credit needs to be shown to him. The thing that I hate more than anything in sports is complacency. That's why I was so high on the Bulls last year, blowing it up. Because if you want to be stuck in mediocrity, fine. Ole Miss got dog walked last year by Alabama too, but by Georgia in Sanford Stadium. And to come back and to really completely revamp their roster. Look, this is their year. They put in a lot of money into this team. And if they lost this game, boosters were not going to be happy. And I'm not going to say Lincoln would have gotten fired, but they built this team to make the playoffs. And Ole Miss can win a national championship. It's not just they can make the playoff. Ole Miss can win a national championship. In a year that's been as funky as this one, they can definitely win a national championship. For Georgia, I told you that before we got on, they don't have a difference maker at wide receiver. More than ever, you don't see a Brock Bowers. You don't see a Ladd McConkey. And you don't realize how important those guys are, not just because they put up crazy numbers, but the way defenses had to adjust to play and let these other guys like Dominic Lovett and whoever else get open. When your longest pass of the day was to Cass Jones and it was like 28 yards, that's not good. That is not good by any measure. And Carson Beck has not been good. And he has regressed more than maybe any quarterback we've seen that had a great last season, came back, going to be a top 5 pick. But I don't think all of it is on him. I think the offensive coaching for Georgia is not where it was. Like, there's a big difference going from Todd Monken to where they are now. Todd Monken, who's the Ravens OC now, was Georgia's offense coordinator when they won or at least one of the national championships. And to go from that to where they are now, it's a very big drop off. And last year they were just so talented, it almost didn't matter. But they don't have that talent. They have some of the pieces on defense. Like I said, I still think Walker's the best edge rusher in the country. But Kirby said in his post-game press conference, this was the most talented team we played. That is very telling when you've played Alabama and Texas. And again, someone really handsome did not have Georgia in their SEC championship because their schedule was so brutal. Georgia has played, just think, at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss. That is brutal. Even Florida doesn't have a stretch like that, 3 games on the road like that. And, you want to knock it out? You want to, think it gets easier? Tennessee comes into town. I don't think Tennessee's any good. I think Georgia's winning that game by 30. But they are still a top 10 team coming to town, and that defense is legit. And Carson Beck needs to wake up. But, Trevor Etienne has not been the savior that they thought he was coming out of the portal. And I think that's, another problem. I saw on Twitter they compared his stats. His stats this time last year at Florida were better than they are right now at Georgia. And that's not any good. But the main takeaway I take from it is I think Ole Miss could legitimately win a national championship. And, Georgia is on the bubble. I think they'll get in if they win out. But, man, what a game this weekend. The schedule does not get any easier for Georgia getting Tennessee this weekend.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. It was a really good weekend. Obviously the big games, they set themselves up. Obviously, we'll get into the next game, I'm sure, of Alabama, LSU. But, those are 2 games that, these are fantastic, November games on the schedule, especially when the SEC looks how it does. These games are huge. Ole Miss did have an elimination game, the first week of November. So, it's exciting. It's great. So,
yeah, I think Georgia, I know you mentioned you think they'll blow them out by 30. I could see it happening. I wouldn't be shocked. But I think that Tennessee D-line is going to present a lot of problems to an already struggling Carson Beck. So I think that game could be pretty interesting this weekend. I know it's in Athens, but pretty excited to watch that one on Saturday. I think that's going to be a good game.
Yeah, blow them out by 30 is a little bit too aggressive for me. I think they'll win. I just wanted to be overemphasized that. But, we'll get into that later. But let's move on. Like James said, Alabama going into LSU was such a vintage Nick Saban win. You almost had to blink, rub your eyes a little bit to say this isn't a Saban team. How many times have we seen a Saban team lose? I mean, it happened last year, lose early in the season, or in this case, more midseason, and they come back in November. They just look like an absolute buzzsaw. And Alabama went in the bye, and they said, look, guys, what are we doing? We need to get back to Alabama football. That's running the ball and playing defense. I think it was 42 runs to 18 passes. They didn't have a third down longer than 39. That's how you win a football game, especially in Death Valley. Jalen Milroe went for $185 on the ground. He was unbelievable. And I truly think there was some nagging injury going on that got somewhat right during the bye week, because he did not look like that the last 3 or 4 weeks coming into this game. And then, look, I mean, if you're LSU, I don't know what you do from here. Everyone is super high on Nussmeier. I think he's a fine quarterback. Todd McShay has him as a second-rated quarterback in the class. I personally don't see that. But look, LSU goes to Florida this week, and as a Gator fan, and there's a lot of stuff going on with the Gators right now. But this is Florida's. They literally did not play guys against Texas, so they could have them healthy against LSU in this game. So LSU is in a world of trouble, and it just goes back to the point. LSU is eliminated from the playoff contention with only 2 conference losses, but because they played an opening season game against a real opponent and not, I don't even know, enter FCS team here that any other team plays. Now they're out of the playoff contention. So again, the scheduling is such an issue in college football. I think it's going to continue to be one, but this is all credit to Alabama, man. Coach DeBoer was just ridiculed for what's been going on there. And to go into Death Valley in a night game, there's not an atmosphere in sports like Death Valley in a night game. And to go there and to have that place basically emptied out with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I mean, there's no bigger statement win maybe in all of college football this year.
Yeah, Alabama made a team that a good LSU team, a fine LSU team, right? They made that team look bad. Like, LSU looked awful. Like, that's just the truth of the matter. They did not look good, and it's credit to Alabama. Like, Jalen Milroe, I mean, how many times do you see a college quarterback especially with stats going into it? In college, if you get sacked, that affects your rushing yards. You don't see college quarterbacks rush for 180 yards, especially against a good LSU team who we've talked about all year. They've kind of revamped that defense. So shout out to Alabama, man. We all knew when they go 10-2, we're gonna see them in the playoffs, and it's gonna be a tough team to beat in the playoffs because it's Alabama, and they have a legitimate quarterback. And I think that's the big deal when you think about teams that can win a national championship. You have to factor in this year, like, there are some really competent quarterbacks, and there's some good teams that don't have maybe the caliber of quarterback. And Alabama clearly has Jalen Milroe, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So it was a statement win. It was a great win. If they would have lost that game, we might have been saying some awful things about Alabama, but we're not. They 30-balled them. So.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by this result. Obviously, I've been pretty critical of Kalen DeBoer this year at Bama as a head coach, but I've never been a real believer in LSU this year, not in the slightest. I don't think Brian Kelly is a coach that can win big games. You look at Week 1, he lost to USC, and the South Carolina game they should have lost. Just random games like that I just don't trust Brian Kelly, even dating back to Notre Dame. Like, you look at a program like Notre Dame, they don't play in the SEC. They're an independent. They pick who they play every year. They play an ACC schedule. So congrats, Brian Kelly. You can beat ACC and MAC opponents at Notre Dame, but he never really had crazy big wins at Notre Dame. I mean, I guess he took them to the national championship one year, but Brian Kelly has not impressed me in the slightest at all throughout his coaching career, and I just don't think LSU is a good fit for him. I think the SEC is different. It's way different than Notre Dame. He's no longer at an advantage in terms of the programs he's constantly playing. He's on the same level or at a disadvantage, and I don't trust Brian Kelly in that situation. I think this LSU program is not as serious with Brian Kelly. Sure, I guess Jaden Daniels won the Heisman, but those weren't his recruits. Malik Neighbors was not his recruit. So it'll be interesting to see LSU moving forward. And I just want to mention briefly all these SEC teams with 2 losses. I think one of Indiana or Notre Dame at least is going to end up getting the short end of the stick when it comes to the playoff. I think these 10-2 SEC teams, me personally, I would take them over a 1-loss Notre Dame who doesn't really have a great win and lost to Northern Illinois at home. I would take them over Indiana, who probably will lose to Ohio State this week. And what's their best win? Nebraska or Washington or Michigan? Like, I think some of these SEC teams with 2 losses, I would have them ahead of Indiana and Notre Dame right now. And I think eventually that's what's going to happen. I think one of those 2 teams are going to end up missing the playoff because they haven't played anybody.
Yeah, that's a really good transition, James, if you want to pull up your top 10. When the committee put out their rankings on Tuesday, and again, the biggest news that came out Tuesday was that Louisville was 21 and Clemson was 22. But I say that because the Chicago Bears, what the committee did, I am legitimately convinced that no one on the committee watches college football because I think they looked at the AP poll and was like, okay, this is what we're going to do, but we're going to be cute. So because Texas A&M beat LSU, we're going to rank A&M 15 and LSU 16. And that's so different. We're so quirky. That's different than the AP poll. And it just makes me so mad. So, Tanner, it's going to take a lot of balls for them to knock out one of those teams with one loss, even though it is the right thing to do. And I'm going to tell you something right now. If the committee does not put in, it all depends how it shakes out. If Georgia finishes 10-2, Ole Miss finishes 10-2, Tennessee finishes 10-2, Alabama finishes 10-2, and one of Texas and A&M, or I guess it would be if A&M beats Texas and Texas is 10-2. If four of those teams don't get in, as well as the SEC championship, the SEC, even Riverside agrees with me. Even Riverside agrees with me. The SEC and Big Ten are going to go form their own thing. Because if you're the SEC, why are you being penalized because you play in a tougher conference? And Indiana has played teams equivalent to like Marshall all year. Granted, they have played very well, and Indiana is the best story maybe in the last 5 years in college football. But if we're talking about does a team, it's the same thing as last year. Did Florida State deserve to be in over Alabama? Yes. Was Alabama better than Florida State? Yes. So if we're actually ranking the best 11 teams and then whatever group of five, Boise State is probably one of the best 12 teams in college football anyway. But if we're ranking the 12 best teams, they need to do it right and not just have, okay, here's the one-loss teams and then, okay, here's the next best two-loss teams in a row. But with that being said, here is James Kex, Week 12, top 25.
I disagree with a lot of what you both just said. Whatever. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I get it. I understand a loss in Northern Illinois is one of the worst losses in college football. Okay, Notre Dame does it every year. One Marshall, one Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois is an awful football team, right? They're not. It would have made me feel better if they were going to win the MAC. Well, they're not gonna. So anyway, I think to Johnny's last point before I get into it, you can't blame Indiana for playing who's on their schedule. They're still playing a Big Ten schedule. It's not their fault. Like the Big Ten and the SEC are the two best conferences of football, undoubtedly. So you can't blame Indiana for going 10-0 in their season. And they're like dog walking the teams they're playing, like simply dog walking them. I get Michigan's not a very good team, but it's still an impressive win to blow them out. Like it is hard, right? Because Tanner absolutely hates Indiana and Notre Dame, and it's rightfully so. And trust me, I hate his team more than anybody else in the world. So it's like I understand what he's saying, but let's just get into it because I'll talk about the teams. I think it's a clear top three: Oregon, Ohio State, Texas. I think the AP poll has 4 Big Tens in the top 5. I think that's right. I don't agree with that, so whatever. We put Indiana at 4. They are dominant. Their offense is electric. It's fun to watch. I think their offense can compete with any team in the country. I will say that. I will believe in that. They're gonna make the playoff. So get used to watching Indiana.
If they lose to Ohio State, I don't think they'll make the playoff.
It totally depends. I think a loss does not matter. If they lose by a touchdown, they're in the playoff, and I completely disagree. If they get blown out, then sure. An 11-1 Indiana.
I think Texas is in a very similar boat to Indiana. If you take away the logo, because Texas has put a very soft SEC schedule. And if Indiana had the Ohio State logo, this wouldn't even be a question in the eyes of the committee, and that's really unfortunate. If you look at Texas's SEC schedule, they have played nobody except for the team they lost to, Georgia. When you play Vanderbilt and Mississippi State and Florida and the rest of the crappy teams that they played, it's the same thing as Indiana playing Washington and Michigan State and all these crappy teams. So I personally think that a school like Georgia or Tennessee or Alabama should be rewarded over those two programs because they actually played competent teams in their conference.
Yeah, again, this goes back to the big issue with having these conferences that have 22 teams in them is the fact that your luck of the draw of what your schedule looks like. Like, sure, Indiana got a very easy first 10 weeks. Bam, we're gonna hit you the number 2 team in the country, right? Like, this is the problem with 20 some teams in the conference. It's just, it works out this way. So, Johnny, you mentioned Tennessee. You don't think they're very good. I think Tennessee is pretty good, based off of the Georgia team that we've watched. This other point about the SEC, there's a lot of 2-loss teams because I think there's a lot of inconsistency right now in the SEC. I don't think there's a ton of teams that could win a national championship in the SEC. I think there's a lot of inconsistent football being played at the SEC level. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Tennessee is going to beat Georgia, but I'm going to sit here and tell you I'm not going to be too surprised if it happens because of Georgia's inability sometimes to look good. Then again, they click it and they blow you up, and it's possible. But whatever. Last week I had Penn State real low. We're doing obviously a different order than we did last week. I'm sure Tanner thinks they're still a little too low. It's fine. I can't believe in Penn State. Notre Dame at 7. I think they have 7 wins in a row over 30. I don't care if you're not playing anybody. They're not playing 0-7 teams. Like I understand they're playing a 1-7 Florida State team, but they look dominant. Riley Leonard is hooping right now. So yeah, I don't care what your opinion is. Tanner, you're not a voter. Johnny, you're not a voter.
Yeah, we should be. We know more than the people that freaking put this.
11-1. It's very simple. And I'm
They're
not
gonna
saying
be in. They're going to be in. They're going to be in at 11-1. But I think that we need to have some sort of boundary. If you lose to NIU at home and you don't play, I don't think they're going to play a ranked team the rest of the way. I don't think you deserve to be in the playoffs.
They play Army in what is an elimination game.
I'm not going to disrespect the armed forces on Veterans Day.
Exactly. So watch your mouth. It's a lose-lose. Here's the thing. I'm not saying they're in because they're Notre Dame and they're 11-1. Notre Dame deserves to be in the playoffs when they go 11-1. Okay, it's just they have been dominant. They had one bad game. Alabama had one bad game too. I'm not comparing that schedule, so don't even get me started on that. So Notre Dame hopefully goes 11-1. I firmly believe this is my top 10. I think Notre Dame is the 7th best team in the country. That is my opinion. I think I'm blown away by just the pure dominance they've had. I don't really care. They got Virginia next week. We're gonna beat the Cavaliers. So we move on. Alabama.
I didn't know Virginia's still a football team.
Real quick, because I really haven't gotten to go yet. First of all, Georgia, Bama, and Ole Miss are all better than Notre Dame.
In Miami.
Why is BYU at 10 if they're undefeated and Indiana's at 4? Like that just doesn't make sense. Like
yeah.
one,
well,
like it's got to
again.
It's
this is my top 10, right? And
do you think BYU is better than Georgia?
Here's yeah, I do. The Cougs right now.
You don't believe that.
I don't.
It's disgusting.
The Cougs are just skating by, okay? And so I can't. I've had a Cougar bias for the last 6 weeks.
Oh,
so
you got to reword that.
I can't drop them because they won, right? Like I can't drop them because they won. But I will say they're definitely better than the honorable mention. But we the Bears sit there at 10 or at 11 because although they should dominate every single one of these teams, I bet you our coaches find a way to lose it. So that's why the Bears are at the honorable mention. So it's a perfect list. This is going to be the order. It's a perfect list. So if you don't agree with me, I think you're wrong.
Yeah, here's some. I want to drop some stats that count. So according to Keck's top 7, Purdue has played 3 of the top 7 teams in the country. They've gotten outscored 168-7, and they still play 2 more of those top 7 teams.
That is so gritty.
So here's a question for you. Can Purdue get to double-digit points against top 10 teams this year? So can they score 3 points against Penn State or Indiana? And can they give up less than 250 combined points between Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, Notre Dame? Because they're
no on the second one, yes on the first one. Purdue is going to mess around and beat Indiana. How poetic would that be?
That would be sick.
I will root for that because Ryan Walters would keep his job, and I know that would irk Tanner. So
I'm gonna.
I don't know if you saw the Barstool Sports post the other day. The Purdue students were at the basketball game. Were chanting "Fire Walters," and
they got in trouble.
They had been advised by the athletic department to stop that. I know the person who started that chant. Just happened to know him, and just wanted to say that. So Yeah.
Yeah, Purdue's
Well, I'll
so
tell you what,
soft.
at least
Thing I've ever heard.
the Purdue AD is probably going to come out and give a vote of confidence like the Florida AD did with Napier, because apparently it is good enough to play hard and lose by 32 points. That's the new Florida standard.
Did Purdue score last week? What was the final in that game?
Gosh.
I believe it was 45-0.
I mean, look, they're competitive. It could have been 50. But look, I can name 7 teams better than BYU right now. So I understand what you're trying to do. They're undefeated. They have to be
I do too. That's why they're at 10.
Yeah, but they should be at.
Purdue could compete with BYU.
Well, I was.
Shut your mouth.
I was in.
That any team that's not legit, which I don't think BYU is legit. Purdue should have beat Illinois. Illinois is ranked.
Are they? No way they're still ranked.
I
Crime if they are.
Here's the thing. I don't have BYU winning the Big 12 anymore, so it doesn't matter where I rank them. So we move on, okay?
Well, I'll tell you this. I was trying to find a place to go to dinner on Saturday night, the same day as the freaking holy war between Utah and BYU. The energy around that rivalry is the equivalent to like an SEC rivalry, and I never thought I would say that. I mean, I was 2 minutes away from the stadium. It was legit.
Power 5 football, man. It's legit everywhere. It's Power 5 football. Like,
no, but I'm saying I've been
rocking at Purdue, and they suck. Like, it gets rocking everywhere. Like,
yeah, but this had a special extra juice because they haven't played in a few years, and I wouldn't. But Miami should still be in the top 10, and nobody almost besides you apparently is a bigger Miami hater than me. I'm not a fan of Miami, but
they absolutely do not deserve to be in the top 10.
That's the thing. There you go. Deserve. It's deserve. Are we basing teams off of what they deserve to be ranked, or what are they actually ranked? And the
Miami hasn't earned a top 10 either.
But the committee is going to do this stuff.
Notre Dame.
Yes, I agree with that. Neither is Notre Dame. And if you're talking about
they've beaten the last 7 opponents by 30 points. How many times have we talked about Miami winning by 1 against nobody, and then they lose to Georgia Tech? Like, Georgia Tech, we thought at the beginning of the season,
really good.
Florida State
would wipe NIU off the floor.
What?
Georgia Tech would wipe NIU off the floor first and foremost.
It goes back to what the committee should do. Georgia should not fall out of the top 10 for going to Oxford.
This guy, I tell you what.
LSU shouldn't – LSU is better than BYU. BYU would finish 12th in the SEC. James, if you don't think so, I don't know. You got to go check out the Cougars that you've been looking at for the last 3 weeks.
Dude, I've been looking at the Cougars, bro. They're
or BYU would finish 7th in the Big Ten. And I don't believe you should reward teams for playing a crappy schedule, even if you don't control.
I'm not a voter, okay? I'm not a voter, but there is no chance in hell I'm dropping the Cougs out of my top 10. I'm just not going to do it because why? Like, why would I drop them?
Because they're not one of the 10 best teams in the country.
But in my, you guys see it from my angle, right? My angle is, one, I want to punch Carson Beck, right? So that knocks off a team, right? Miami, frauds, that knocks them off, right? I do think they have the best quarterback in the country, but it doesn't matter, right? Because Tanner doesn't want to do this with me anymore, so therefore they're gone, right? So it doesn't, and I have to put the Cougars up there because I think I had them at 7 last week or the week before. So I understand the Utah AD can cry. By the way, get off the mic, bro. You're the AD.
He's right.
I don't care if you're right or wrong. You're not taking a press conference, brother. Nobody cares. Like, you look like an idiot. So that's that. I'm never getting a job at Utah now, but it's fine.
It's a great year. Beautiful.
But I'm just telling you, there was no way I, James Andrew Keck, could have dropped BYU out of my rankings because they won. So it is what it is. And Notre Dame, I'm telling you right now, when they get into the playoff, it is November 11th. It's Johnny's beloved birthday. So let's hear it for Johnny's birthday, okay?
Happy birthday.
On November 11th, I said it right here. Notre Dame's going to run the table, and they're going to compete for a national championship. And they have looked so good, and I don't care that they're not playing anybody.
If Notre Dame makes the semifinals, which means that they'd have to, I would be willing. Okay, but That's all right. While we're fired up, everybody in the Bears organization still has a job. Um, I was talking to Tanner on earlier. The Bears will not be favored in a single one of their games going forward. There's a legitimate chance where they finish with 4 or 5 wins. Um, James, who's the most pessimistic fan I've ever met for a singular sports team.
Yeah.
What is your take on the beloved Chicago Bears, who gave up 9 sacks to the New England Patriots, who came in, I think, Tanner, you know this down with me, with 10 sacks, I think, on the year, and they had 9 against the Bears?
Yeah. It's sad. Again, I just said November 11th, Notre Dame's going to run the table. I can say it today that the Bears will not win the Super Bowl this year. It's an
Now you can say it. All right.
It's an unfortunate statement, but so 2 weeks ago, let's flash back, is the first time I've ever turned the Bears game off because I was disappointed, I was sad, I was mad. This week, I watched the Patriots game, not even that upset. I don't know if it's because I'm used to it or am I just laughing inside at the mess that everyone. You know what? We need to blow it up, blow it all up. I'm talking every single person, from the beer vendor, right, to the parking lot attendant, to the owner, needs to lose their job. I don't care. You don't deserve it. Okay, it is an atrocity that we haven't scored a touchdown in 2 games against the Cardinals and the Patriots.
Cardinals are a good team.
We have way too many weapons to not be able to score a touchdown. And so let's talk football here after I told the beer vendor he's losing his job. But it's a disappointment. Shade Waldron has been really bad scheme-wise. Matt Eberflus, I don't think should, and I do say this, I don't think he should be fired by the end of the year, but the fact that Shane Waldron has a job right now is asinine. I think it's terrible. I've said it on this podcast multiple times. When you get Cole Kmet involved, I think the Bears could be a really good team. And for one drive, he was involved. One drive. And he caught, I think, 2 or 3 passes, and we actually moved down the field a little bit. Caleb Williams, I like that he's a competitor, but he's not there yet, right? It is kind of silly for us to think that he was going to step in and be this big role because Ryan Poles did not support him. I was wrong, right? I did think Caleb Williams was going to be able to step in because I thought the offensive line was going to be manageable. Caleb isn't experienced enough right now. He doesn't have pocket presence. That's going to be something that he needs to be better on because the Bears just aren't in one season going to become this top 10 offensive line. It's just not going to happen. But now you're the Bears, and you're going to have a top 10 pick maybe again, and you better go draft an offensive line. And I tell you what, the McCaskies better be sitting there thinking about firing Matt Eberflus, Ryan Poles, Shane Waldron, everyone. Like I'm disappointed. Ryan Poles is supposed to be an offensive line guy, and we have the worst in the league. I understand we have had some injuries, but this team is too star-studded to be as bad as they are. DJ Moore, I could have a whole podcast about how just tired I am.
Don't even start on DJ Moore. There's not a single player in the NFL I dislike more.
There's a few pluses I think of the Chicago Bears right now. I think Caleb Williams will eventually be fine, right? I don't think a rookie quarterback, and it happens every flipping year when the Bears draft a quarterback, the other quarterbacks that are drafted behind them look better, and it's simple. They're in a better system. Caleb Williams has no opportunity to be as good as a Jaden Daniels right now. I mean, heck, even a Drake May. Like, it's so frustrating right now to watch Caleb Williams because I do think he's a competitor and a grinder. I think Rome Odunze, I think he's going to be a great receiver for the Chicago Bears. Keenan Allen's looked okay. So there's pluses. DeAndre Swift, I think, has turned into the running back that we wanted him to be. Caleb Williams is going to be fine, and I think Rome Odunze is fine. Other than that, fire everyone, including the beer vendor. I don't really care. Tanner, please talk because I hate the Chicago Bears right now.
George McCaskey can't be the owner of the Bears anymore. Someone serious has got to take it over. It is so bad. I can't even.
Who do you want to buy it? Who do you want to buy the Chicago Bears?
Me.
I don't care. Donald Trump. Let Donald Trump run the Bears.
I think
He'll
he's
find a way
busy.
to be successful.
I think he's busy.
Busy for the next 4 years.
I mean, I don't understand how they're so incompetent. It's what did I said it last year on the pod. I know for a fact I did. We're running through the same cycle here. You draft the quarterback, and you don't fire the head coach. You keep him there for the rookie season, and then you fire the head coach. So then all of a sudden you have a rookie quarterback who's had 2 head coaches, 2 offensive coordinators in 2 seasons. That's just fantastic. Welcome to it, Caleb. Welcome to it, Caleb. It's an absolute dumpster fire. It is a mess. Ryan Poles, I think, needs fired too. I like a lot of the moves he's made. Look, he the talent in terms of this roster, he has turned it around in a 3-year span. Claps to that. But unfortunately, you are way too close to your head coach, who is, I mean, let's be real, they're butt buddies. They are butt buddies. It's time to let go of your head coach. It is
Tanner,
time.
nothing that you're saying is going to be left in the podcast.
I don't care. Like,
I might-
the Bears.
All right,
are
give us
so
something that we can use
frustrating.
for the pod.
They're
Come
the
on,
new
give us-
Chicago Cubs. They're the new Chicago Cubs. They're a mess. They always are going to lose. They're never going to win in my lifetime. I'll be. I mean, am I ever going to see the Bears win a Super Bowl? I don't think I am.
I hope so,
I've never
Tanner.
seen him win a playoff game. I'm gonna be completely honest.
I hope so. You gotta. Here's the thing. Matt Eberflus said today in the press conference that he won't talk about Shane Waldron's status, which usually, if he knows that Shane Waldron's going to be the play caller next week, he'll just flat out say it. So I'm praying to God that, heck, who knows? Maybe even while we film this, we get something tomorrow during a press conference. Again, this is talking about people's livelihood. Like, I get it. It's a tough conversation. But when you enter the world of sports, it's just like any other job, right? Johnny, if you were doing a bad job for the Utah Jazz, guess what they would do?
Fire
They
him.
would fire you, right? They would fire you. If I didn't do a good job at my job, they would fire me. They're not doing a good job. It's a simple thing. It's a cycle. They should be fired, right? Because guess what happened? Johnny, if he gets fired from the Jazz, he'll go find another job. If I get fired, I'll go find another job. Shane Waldron will find another job, but he cannot work for the Bears because he's underperforming. He has failed every one of his reviews, right? Every one of them. Like, if you would have told me that the Bears were going to lose to the Patriots and we'd still, a day after that game, have every single coach on the coaching roster, I would have laughed at you. I even texted Tanner yesterday. I said, I mean, surely if we lose to the Patriots, we fire everyone, right? And he's like, no, probably not. Like, it's just not going to happen. And I'm just like, it's so frustrating because, like I said, it's another job, right? Coaching an NFL team is a job. And if you don't do your job, you should be fired. Therefore, Shane Waldron, hey, bud, you haven't scored a touchdown in 2 games. You're not doing your job. You should be fired. So, upset, sad. It's disheartening. I mean,
Don't cry.
it's just.
It's all right.
I can't even cry. There's no more emotions left to feel.
I know.
What I sat there and stared at my TV screen for 3 hours, and guess what? Not once did I clap out of excitement, and not once did I like scream in disappointment. I was just a blank stare at the screen because I'm so used to it, and there's no more emotions left to be felt.
It's okay because
I wish
And then
I
the
never
Bucks lose
started
another game.
watching football.
the Bucks almost won again, though. No
Yeah.
team is better than almost winning than the Bucks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty impressive how much they almost win.
Should we just change teams to make our podcast better? Because we talk a lot about losing. I can jump on the Chiefs wagon if you.
I knew you were going to say that.
I guess at this moment I don't really hate Matt Nagy that much, so I guess I can get on the Chiefs bandwagon.
I love the Lions, man. I love the Lions. I'm rooting for the
Speaking
Lions.
of that, Tanner, do you have a top 5?
In the NFL, I have a bottom 5.
Well, we're done talking about negativity because the best team in the NFL is the Lions. They have so much grit that and it comes from their head coach, Dan Campbell. And for them to win that game last night after Jared Goff, your boy Tanner throws 5 picks in a game. It was really in 3 quarters. And look, we talk about regression with Carson Beck. What about C.J. Stroud's regression? No one wants to talk about it. He has not been good this year. I understand Nico Collins has been hurt, and he was maybe the best receiver in football when he was healthy. But, man, one receiver shouldn't make you drop off that bad. You see Baker Mayfield play without his top 3 receivers, and he's still making plays. And C.J. Stroud isn't. It's a massive, massive problem to me. They're lucky that division is the worst division again in football because they're still going to get a home playoff game. And when that happens, you never know. But I was a huge fan of CJ Stroud. I love his message off the field, and I love his play on the field. And it's discouraging for him to have regression like this. And look, he's missing his top 2 receivers. I get it. But there's also other quarterbacks in the NFL that are missing valuable people that contribute to their offense that are still performing. So if you're really an elite level quarterback, you make it work. I'm not going to compare anyone to Patrick Mahomes, but until they got Deshaun Hopkins, like I say, what's my favorite saying? He's throwing the freaking lawn chairs out there, wide receiver. And now you get Deshaun Hopkins, and all of a sudden they start cooking a little bit. Should they have lost? Yeah. Does it hurt that Bo Nix is better than Caleb Williams right now? Probably. But that was an unnecessary jab.
It was, dude. Like you can literally.
But I mean, the NFL is like the NFL is like so discouraging to me because college football is there's something the pageantry in college football. You can always go to a game and maybe your team won't win and you'll be miserable. Like when the Gators lose, I'm pretty mad for like 24 hours. But when you're at a college football game, especially at a Gator game, you go through the tradition and you're like, man, at least that was something cool to take away. When you go to a freaking Bucks game, your ears are ringing if they score points because they're firing the freaking cannons. It's about 116 degrees even the first weekend of November, and then you get your heart ripped out because Todd Bowles doesn't know how to time manage and coach, and for some reason Bucky Irving isn't in the 7-yard line when he's the best running back on the team. Anyway, I'm sick of talking about the NFL. You know what I love though? College basketball, which has been incredibly electric so far, even though Purdue's big man broke his leg. But
that added on to a great Sunday afternoon yesterday.
I bet it did. But I will say I've watched a lot of college basketball, more college basketball than I've watched maybe through the first few weeks ever in my existence. Kansas is the best team in the country. I understand they almost lost to North Carolina, but a team that has that much competitive is a major, major, major problem. And I understand there's 10 days in. I have major red flags with Alabama and the way they're using the rotation. I have major red flags with Houston. I know Alabama goes to Purdue either Thursday or Friday. And I have major red flags with Houston. Houston, like normal, they don't have a guy that's like, wow, he's skilled. At the end of the game, he can go get us a bucket. They don't have a guy like that. And to me, that's very, very, very concerning. Do you guys have any takes on college basketball before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited, obviously, for the season. I think what I love about this season in college basketball, I know you mentioned you think Kansas is the best team in the country. I couldn't give you a national champion pick right now. I think it's so wide open. That's what I'm excited for. I think there's a lot of conferences that are going to be wide open. With Daniel Jacobson, I was going to say Purdue probably wins the Big Ten. Not easily, but by a couple games. And now I think the Big Ten is going to be interesting. And I just think the SEC is going to be interesting. I think Auburn looks pretty good. I think Bama, obviously, they have struggled a little bit, but Bama's going to be there. Florida is good. Who knows what?
Florida's really good. Florida's really good. And we talk about depth. Florida has 8 guys that can go, and it puts a smile on your face to see it. But I mean, Tanner, you're right. I think there's like 45 teams or 40 teams in college basketball. They're like, wow, they can really play. They can make a Sweet 16.
And I tell you what, Feast Week, which is my favorite, aside from the 4 days in March. I mean, can you tell what my favorite sport to watch is? Feast Week is probably my favorite full week in the sports calendar. And I get that there's NFL games on and there's college football on, but it's because those college basketball tournaments that whole week are electric. And this year, if you just look at the schedule that week, I mean, it's to die for. That week is to die for.
Yeah, no doubt. And I obviously, the Illini fan, they gotta stop playing on Big Ten Network Plus because I'm gonna buy a subscription or ask Tanner's dad for his login because it kind of sucks because when they play on Big Ten Network Plus, like the ESPN box scores don't even load. So like you're just watching like score updates because Big Ten Network Plus is expensive. Like I'm not paying for it so I can watch Illinois play, SIUE. But obviously, I think Illinois will get ranked. By the way, I do.
It came out today. Were they ranked?
Oh, did it come out today?
Oh,
wait, it's
I
Monday.
forgot to see where Purdue's at.
God, I'm forgetting it's Monday. So we're gonna do a live reaction here.
Let's see if Illinois is ranked. I know Florida moved up.
Rankings. Oh,
Purdue's 13,
Illinois is on the outside looking in. What do you know? So,
as they should be. So, right, Ole Miss is ranked even though they almost lost to Grambling.
well, yeah, well, whatever.
Grambling plays Florida tonight, John.
Yep, I'm about to be locked into it. But
whatever. Yeah, Illinois is ranked 26, so it doesn't. Whatever. I think I'm excited. I'm excited for Illinois basketball. I think that's the glaring thing in these few weeks where they're playing these really bad non-cons. Obviously, Illinois has a pretty fun non-con. They play Duke, Arkansas, yada yada yada. But like, it's like these games where they're playing, these teams. You can kind of see that bench rotation. You can kind of see what you have. And with this Illinois team who lost everybody and they hit the transfer portal probably harder than anybody else in the country, it was very interesting to kind of see how this rotation was going to work. And I think this Illinois team can win the Big Ten. I do agree with Tanner. I think this Big Ten is going to shake out to be a very fun conference once again, and I look forward to that feast week because like that schedule is nuts, right? I mean, it's electric, and if you are a sports fan in general, you look forward to these big weekends in college basketball. Obviously, it's a long season, but these tournaments that we have are just, I mean, it's just fun. It doesn't prove anything, and I don't really think. I mean, like Johnny said, Kansas barely beats North Carolina, but that's a really good North Carolina team who is high on a lot of people's brackets, future predictions, and whatnot. But college basketball is electric in the fact that you do have 30 teams that you could literally see in the Final Four, and that's really exciting. So I tell you what, it's good to be November. Football is getting amped up. Unfortunately, our teams suck. But yeah, this is a good time. Baseball, we love baseball. We all love our baseball teams, but it's kind of a boring time, right? So now we get football, NBA, college hoops, and I think we're ready to go. So
we're beyond locked in.
This is my official statement on the Daniel Jacobson injury. Real quick, I think it changes things in the regular season. I don't think it changes my outlook for Purdue's ceiling in March because at the end of the day, I was high on Purdue this season because of their guard play, which I think is very good, and their depth, which I think is very good, and their head coach, Matt Painter, who I think is very good. So zero excuses out of me. Purdue is a program that has been to the Final Four last year. They've been really good before that. It's a program that should have depth, and they do have depth. So there's zero excuses despite injuries. It is time to show the country that they are a legit program and stay relevant this year and stay up there, which I think they will. But yeah, that was
I tell you what, a bearded Braden Smith is a scary sight. It is a scary sight.
Save that. With Tanner's amazing rendition about Purdue, we'll end the podcast there. What a day! Some say this is the best day of the year.
I think August 5th is.
August is there's only baseball going on. No one cares. January is a pretty good month too.
Buddy, your birthday is on a Monday. It's the worst day of the week.
Next year it'll be on a Tuesday. I don't know.
Happy birthday, Johnny! Big 2-2, big Taylor Swift, right? Are you 23?
Yeah, I'm in my era. I'm pretty sure that's what they call it. I gotta ask my dad. My dad went to Taylor Swift.
If I wake up on a random day in January and I say happy, if I hear happy Taylor Swift year, there's a good chance I don't talk to you again because I will not.
I heard that. January 13th. Yep. Text Tanner, wish him his happy. He won't talk to you again, apparently.
Yeah, we should say happy Travis Kelce year.
Oh, that's true.
Basically it won. But all right, we'll end it there. Like, subscribe, comment if you made it this far, and we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
Peace.